Hi, everyone. Today is Wednesday, October 12th of 2022, and we are here for Rudy's Psychic Meetup. Thanks so much for joining us. And of course, we have Rudy.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Thanks for rescheduling. I know I was out of town on a hunting trip with my son. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but this worked out well. But we got two Ask a Mediums in a row on Wednesday. But boy, you had quite the ordeal just to try to get here to the live stream. Everything keeps happening, doesn't it?
Well, it just seems like every single time something keeps happening. I mean, even before when I think it was the weekly crypto review on Thursday, there was like this really big like downpour. So I couldn't do it from the sunroom. So I moved and I was in the other this spot here. And but then water started coming through. I didn't know where it was coming from. So of course, I mean, you can't just leave and go and do a 1 to 2 hour live stream, with us. So I was just like, so anyways, I got a towel set up there. I didn't know, because it was sliding through the glass there. So there wasn't like always one spot. So I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll put a towel down. So then I can kind of survey where it's coming in when I come back. And that all worked out okay. But I was just like, and then tonight the power supply just completely was broken. And tonight, I didn't get back until 20 minutes to the hour because we were getting my son from basketball. Actually, it was quarter to the hour. So, But then I came right down, and then I couldn't get the computer on. So all this time we were dickering with that. So thankfully.
Well, you got it to work though, so that's the good news. It's funny, we were just talking before we came live about like practicing your abilities. And Sam, I know you had a story with an article, but Sam had sent me a picture of her husband looking at her computer, and the thought that came to mind was power supply. And Sam, you were thinking that too, but also someone was asking you, like, how do you practice your abilities, right? That's a way that you just kind of go with that first instinct sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was suggesting to someone that they write it down in a book. I said, just write down everything, and then you can keep track of it as well. Because one of the great things about working with the Sam Jammers is that a lot of stuff I blab about, I just forget about it because, I'm talking to people every day on Discord. Up until, probably about 6 months ago, I was doing readings here and there. I would be doing a couple a week usually, just on a part-time basis, just to sharpen my abilities and, and help out individuals too. Because I find sometimes that people need to just sit down with me one-on-one and just sort of just get the minutia all sort of straightened out, and then they can just continue on their journey on their own. I mean, most of us, we can just do it all on our own, but it's always good when you have a friend who can, read minds and see the future.
I think it was last year. I was like, Sam, I feel like I need to just talk to you for like a half hour.
Yeah.
And when we sat down, and it was what I needed. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always said, I really appreciate the work everybody's been doing with me the last couple of years. I know that we're coming to the end of, the first chapter of that work. I don't want people to panic and think that I'm going anywhere, but now I'm going to switch from, this is the grand experiment, and I'm learning how to master my ability so that I can make a difference in the world. Because, if people really knew who I was, a lot of them would have left Southern Florida. Right? They would have left, and there wouldn't be, I mean, they're probably going to end up, by the time they get all the debris and everything, they're probably going to find like over 200 people dead.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, what are they already up to 135? And they said the worst storm before that was 1935.
Yeah, because once it goes, people weren't thinking it was going to zip back, so they just stayed there. Especially people in the center, right? They're like, "Oh, we're fine."
Yeah, and I appreciate that one of the Sam Jammers said, she's been part of the channel long enough. When she saw me all tears when we did the, I'm going to try to guess where this hurricane's landing deal, and she was in Southern Florida, and she said, they said it was going to go north, so I didn't get in my car and go north. She goes, but after your live stream, I got in my car and I went north.
Good on her.
And that was like one person, because you have to remember, it's not just, the death and destruction, but think about how fearful it is to have to go through a storm like that and to know the water's coming, and you may still have power, but you're on Twitter and people are like just totally in full-blown panic, and things are bad are happening all around you, and then you have no power, or the people around you have no power and are completely flooded out.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, it's just not a situation that you want to be caught in the middle of. If you can I've always said that about my abilities. I said, I can't stop things from happening, but I can sure as heck help you get out of the way so that you
Yeah.
can be the helping hand on the other end and not the person who's had bad stuff happen to you. And that's certainly, a better place to be in if you can be on the other end of it and be uninjured and able to get involved with the cleanup and helping people who were not so fortunate.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned you had been having a lot of synchronicities lately too. What kind of things have been happening?
Well, even when my husband was at the same time he was trying to fix my desktop here before I came on tonight, he was on the phone with work because they're trying to solve a problem. And I was texting you, and one of the words and it was at the same time I was texting you the word simple.
Yeah.
He said on the phone, he said the word simple, and it's been going on like with the other night we were watching a program that it wasn't about kung fu or
Hmm.
anything like that, but I was talking to him about like me being in martial arts and that it was kung, and I referred to kung fu, but at the same time I said the word when I was talking to him. The guy on the movie, which we had stopped, when you start talking to your spouse or whoever you're
Yeah.
watching a movie with, you stop listening to the dialogue on the
Right.
TV. And that's a great thing about you can just rewind it, right? So anyways, he I said the word to him the same time the person on the TV said the word. And that happened quite a few times just in the last couple of weeks. And it's starting to get really weird. And even my oldest Spencer was talking about some really crazy synchronicities that were happening as well. And I've been getting reports back from a lot of the Sam Jammers that there's been a lot of that very much similar type of stuff. So that's why I wanted to share with everybody that, hey, it's just look, it's the everything all at once. I see Stromboli in Italy started really throwing out some smoke. Was it today or yesterday? So, and that was
I
one of
didn't
the
see it.
signs of the financial collapse. And, so again, I know that it's scary, but it's going through this is what helps, is what gets money to flow into cryptocurrencies. And you can see
Okay.
that, right? Because why would people want to hold on to their pound sterling and their pension is a mess? They're going to put their money, what, gold and silver? Pfft, good luck getting any of that right now. They
Yeah.
can't source it, you know?
Well, that's a really unique synchronicity, and you mentioned that more than once of words, like saying words almost right at the same time, or you say
Yeah.
something right after that same word comes up. So it's interesting because it's very unique. It's not just like you're different types of synchronicities; it's that same type. So that's I like that. That's
Yeah.
really a good one to
Yeah,
pay
and it
attention
just
to.
shows me, I'm just like, okay, where I've got 1 foot here and 1 foot here.
Yeah.
Is whereas but previously I might have been like in and out all the time, but now it seems like I'm riding both the rails at the same time. So I guess that's the way it has to work after you're near the end of your training, because I'm coming up on the
Yeah.
4 years. That'll be in February.
Well, and I'm getting a lot of, I mentioned this last time too, but the number that catches my eye is 333. And that I keep seeing that everywhere, and I just smile every time I see it. I'm like, huh, interesting. it's a, so, it'll be different for everybody, but yeah, I'm curious to see what other types of things people are having. And yeah, put them in the chat if you've had some interesting ones out there. So. All right, so well, let's jump into the topics. I didn't get a chance to do. It's been a very busy week to do a lot of, so I haven't done the research like I typically do. But you know, this past week I've had a lot of things, kind of just thoughts that come into my head based on what I was doing, and I thought, well, these are probably interesting ones to talk about. So I mentioned I'd taken my son on a hunting trip. This was his second time, and we were hunting for elk. Don't worry, no animals were harmed in the making of this live stream here. But this is the second time he's gotten a hunting tag, and it's a youth hunt, so it's a little bit less. It's at the bit earlier in the season, not as many people out there. But every time I hunt, I usually will try to call on someone who's passed away to help me and say, "Hey, can you chase some deer or some elk, whatever I'm hunting for? Can you kind of send some our way?" And one of the persons that helped us with his first hunt, this guy Eddie, he passed away within the last year or so. But he loved to hunt. He was a huge hunter, always loved helping people. And so I specifically asked him to come along on this hunt. And I would think about him and I would kind of get that tingling feeling. And I asked him, every day to say, hey, can you send some elk our way? And sure enough, we saw them every day. My question to you is, how much can people on the other side influence those types of things? I know it's nice to think of, they like if we think about them, to be part of it, but how much can they actually influence those types of things?
Well, it's all based on the intentions from our direction as
Okay.
well. So by you actually asking him to do that, that gave him sort of, I guess you can say, better permission
Oh,
to do
okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more like and that's why it's people that we know who do these things. I
Okay.
mean, normally people who've crossed over to the other side, they don't, they're not allowed to like speak to you audibly,
Right. Right.
but I've heard like my grandfather spoke to me audibly
Okay.
when I was in their house, and he had just passed away within the last year or two, and then I heard him say hello to me in his very specific, and he has sort of a certain way of speaking, and somebody's voice when you hear it. um so those things are more so allowed with our loved ones that we knew growing up, or
Okay.
had some sort of familial relationship with, or really good friendship with as well.
Okay.
I find it's more common with family though than it is even with friends, but yeah,
Okay.
if you've got someone who's like a really really good friend.
Well,
um
in that, because I was wondering, they can also, I wonder if they can nudge us to do certain things. And the other example I have is, so I'm going hunting next month. I have a hunt with some friends of mine for elk as well. My friend has a cabin up in this area, and it's a great story. So his wife, her dad built a cabin up there in the 70s up in this area we're going to. And one day he got up, and they'd always talked about maybe buying something up there. But one day he gets up and he's like, "Oh, I think I want to look at Zillow." He just got this urge to go and look on Zillow. And he's looking around and he sees a cabin for sale. And he's like, "Look, Jenny, this is your dad's cabin." No, it's not. And they start looking at it like, yes, it is. And he's a little bit, I think he's pretty sensitive. He might have some woo going on and not know it. But he, something drew him to look at that and find that property and find that it was their cabin. And sure enough, they told the story to the realtor, they told the people that were selling it, and they eventually got it. Even had some of the furniture that that they had put in there when she was growing up. So it's a real neat story. But I think something like that too is, if we're able to pay attention to these nudges, I'm wondering if like family members from the other side were kind of nudging him to say, "Hey, go take a look," right?
Yeah, and it, like I said, it's usually family members that are able
Okay.
to reach us in that way and give us that nudge.
Right.
And it's like, it's when we do things like that where he just had an urge to look on Zillow. And
Mhm.
so when you said it was Jackie's father's cabin, I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, I'm not surprised about that, because what happens is they usually look for whoever's in the bunch that
Right.
maybe has some woo there, that where they're
Okay.
able to pick that
Okay.
up. Because when you're able to pick up stuff like that, even slightly from the other
Mhm.
side, I mean, that's what being psychic is. It's like you're a little radio transmitter.
Yeah.
So they just
Yeah.
look around to see who could potentially pick this up, but then also put it in action as well. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff that I'm sure people have gotten impressions about,
Yeah.
ideas about, but then they just didn't put it in action. And then they realized after the fact, oh yeah, I really should have done that instead and gone with my
Yeah.
gut, and things would have been so much better.
Well, it's funny, like Renai's saying, she actually asked for confirmation. And I guess that's another way to practice it is you can, so like I see, she says, I then see like the exact license plate number she asked for. So there are, there's other ways to do that as well, I guess, where you can actually, if you really want to be sure, you can look for confirmations and get specific. So, yeah, that's neat. So if we go on to the hunting weekend, the other topic that came up was, I call this one "If Looks Could Kill." So we, on the day before opening day, we went out scouting the area, and we were in this up on this ridge, and we were kind of overlooking this little valley. And sure enough, we see a small herd of cow elk start kind of coming through, and they were just grazing. And my son was so excited, and we just kind of quietly stood there. And I hadn't prepped him on like, hey, don't look him in the eye, just stand real still. He instinctively knew just to, we basically both froze and just watched him. And they took a turn and slowly started walking up the hill right by us. And we didn't look him in the eye. You kind of look around them, but try not to look him in the eye. And I've heard of that before, like this prey and predator thing kicks in. And I guess the question is, what happens when you lock eyes with like another creature like that and there is a predator prey relationship? I've also heard about this where even if you're looking at an animal and you're not locking eyes but you're staring at them intently, there's something that they will pick up and they will, you can spook them that way. So what is that? Is it energetic that they are picking up on and that predator prey type thing when you feel like you're being watched?
Yeah. Well, I mean, living like animals, they have a different type of spirit from humans. Human spirits are light beings, part of source. And that's, sort of that's the more enlightened group. When people say, oh, you'll come back as a bug. And I'm like, you actually can't, from what I know. And I'm glad for that too. I wouldn't want to come back as a lobster or a bug or something like that. But as far as, your dogs and cats, and I mean, I've spoken to dogs that have passed over on the other side. So, I mean, they are like living spirits, but they're animal spirits. So it's different, but I can still speak to them, and you can speak to them when you're on the other side too. Because that's where I'm going when I talk to them. I'm on the other side talking to them. That's how I get my information, and then I come back here. That's all. So you can too. When you die and you go through the tunnel at the other end and go through your end of life review, I mean your dogs and cats and your pets, they're all waiting for you there.
No, that's neat to think about. But it made me think because I also hear this. I've mentioned before, I love my Bigfoot stories and stories of Dogman. And a common element of that is you have this intense feeling that you're being watched. And I think even as humans, we can pick up on that as well. And so my thought is there's something to the eyes, or there's something about the focus where you are picking up on an energy possibly, or I was just trying to figure out what that might be that you're perceiving when somebody is staring at you and you can't see them.
Oh, well, I mean, remember that there's nothing physical that shows up in the ethos, but our essence is there.
Okay.
So there's nothing blocking our essence. And if it's it doesn't have to be another human or light being. It can be the essence of like an animal spirit, for example. There are some, it's kind of like, oh, well, what makes them a spirit? And it's like, okay, well, here's the very basic stuff for them to be spirit. And that would be one of them.
Okay.
Right. Whereas, us as light beings, this is from what I understand from asking the questions myself while I'm traveling there. What I understand is that we are the light beings. So the animals are here to serve us, but we're responsible for them too. That's why, we must be kind to them and make sure that they're looked after, because again, with great power and supremacy comes responsibility. And, we're responsible for these beings, our dogs and our cats who rely on us completely. And they have a very special kind of bond with us. And I feel like a really big part of that bond is because, they can look you in the eyes and their spirit locks with your spirit. So even though you're a human spirit and they're an animal spirit, there's still that basic spiritual connection that you can have with your pet.
Yeah, I'll say that even with our dog, I've noticed more like I can look at her and I kind of figure out like what she wants. Like she wants to go do this or do that, and it's not always just food.
Yeah.
But I the more time you spend, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
And that also kind of goes into you hear about stories of whether you're like attracted to people, or sometimes you just want to look at somebody, or two people, like you'll just be walking in a crowd and two people will kind of be drawn to look at each other. Sometimes it's an attraction thing. And I remember I was reading a book years ago called The Celestine Prophecy, and they talked about that. Like when you're connecting with someone, it meant that you were supposed to have some sort of interaction with them. But is there something to that when two humans will be drawn to look at each other, like in a crowded area, across a crowded room? Do you think it's like energy or a frequency level that maybe you're attracted to, that maybe draws your stare?
Yeah, I know a lot of times people automatically assume that it's, you know, somebody that you would have a physical relationship with, but
Mhm.
more so than not, it would be, other individuals, friendship being than more common as far as, seeing someone. And then you just immediately feel comfortable
Yeah.
sort of hanging out with them. I remember when I went to a grade 6 center. It was all grade 6 kids. So we were bused from all over Panama City, Florida,
Uh-huh.
into this grade 6 center in this slum area in town. I was like, "Oh my god, people actually live." They would actually live like in tar paper shacks.
Yeah.
This was like
Yeah.
the late 70s. So I was like, see, where I came from, if you lived in a place like that, you would die. Like you would freeze to
Yeah.
death in the wintertime, right? Where
Yeah.
I live, you couldn't survive if you were in something like that. So I had never seen anything like that before. I always remember that. But there was like 400 sixth graders, if you could believe it, all in one school. And of course, you know, I was new just the year before. So it's not like I came there automatically with a friend. And I ended up meeting this girl, but I didn't know who she was, nothing. Right. And I was sitting directly across from her. And remember, there's 400 sixth graders.
Mhm.
So there's like maybe 25 in a class. So think about how many classrooms there are. I know we had 4 wings, like Aquarius and Gemini. They named them after the
Oh, yeah.
astrological signs. 4 of them, anyways, 4 wings. And I was just looking at this girl. I was looking across at her and we kept
Mhm.
smiling and sort of giggling and laughing. And then once they did roll call and then recess came, her and I just immediately went to each other and we started talking. And anyways, we ended up being like best of friends. And even though I was bussed in and I actually had to sit, if you drove from the 6th grade center to my house straight without stopping, it would take you at least 20 minutes. She lived 2 doors down from me.
Wow. That's interesting.
Boom.
So
Punchline. You're like, Sam, where are you going with this? This is an awfully long story. She lived 2 doors down from me. And we were, like I said, best friends. And there was that immediate connection that I had with her. And we,
yeah.
yeah.
So the theme is pay attention to those little synchronicities and those connections. Um, the last thing I wanted to touch on around this is that sometimes you mentioned we will be drawn to look at someone. There's also a role that I think charisma can play, and if I just Google charisma, it's defined as a compelling attractiveness or charm that can inspire devotion in others, or a divinely conferred power or talent. So when I think about charisma, we've all known those people that they walk into a room, they're a little bit larger than life for some reason. You're drawn to look at them when they walk into a room. I'm sure you probably have a little bit of that yourself going on. And it's not always just looks. Sometimes there's more to it. That my brother-in-law is a average looking, tall, ginger Irish guy, and he is the life of the party, right? so and so the question becomes, when we are drawn to these people as they walk in the room, again, is like, what are they giving off? What are we picking up on? Is it energetic? Is it vibration? What is this quality that makes people have charisma?
And again, going back, isn't it interesting that you mentioned that it's not the best person
Yeah.
in the room always, right? Most times it's not actually. It's a combination of how someone carries themselves, but there's also this and there's there's a few different groups of people, unfortunately, who throw that off. And there's a certain group of like psychopathic people
Okay.
who are actually, because they don't know how to behave properly themselves to get what they want,
Yeah.
because they were always getting in trouble when they were little. So they figured out like how to, you know, fake like they had empathy because they
Yeah.
don't, you know.
Okay.
But then so be very careful, you know, when it with somebody who's really, you know, charismatic, because again, a person can train themselves to be that way. I do think that there's certain individuals that have, you know, and I've seen it before. There's, you know, there's something deep in their soul. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen like kids that I'm like, oh my goodness, they have such an old soul.
They have it or something. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember my
Yes.
old house, there's a kid lived across the street. They were renters and they were asking if we can put on our, borrow our basketball hoop.
Yeah.
And the kid, like, he was probably 7 or 8. I'm like, this kid just had some swagger to him, right? Like, this kid's a star. Like, yeah, I looked at him like, oh my God, he had a personality. I'm like, this guy is going to do well with the ladies, number one, or be
Yeah.
a huge success later on in
Right.
life, right?
Oh, exactly, and like I said, it is a combination, and I think that for the people who are doing it for the right reasons, it's a talent,
Okay.
you know, not a manipulation. For the other group I spoke about, it's a manipulation, and I'm very careful about that too because I've had run-ins with not too many because usually I can get people's number like right away, and I just get away from that. I'm just like, you know what, I'm wonderful at getting out of the way, right? I don't want to. I'm busy. I don't have time for drama, right? It's better just to put all that stuff in your rearview mirror and just go, oh, okay, next, please. I'm just
Yeah, like I've seen I call them like cookie cutter CEOs that learn there are
mhm.
things that can be taught, but I still think that there's something, I don't know if it's genetic or energetic, that comes like deep within that some people just have it and you can't really describe what it is, as Susan or G says, that indefinable something, right?
Yeah, I do think that it does come from, you know, deep within the soul, and it's a talent and
Okay.
something that people will be, I guess, held responsible for. Because, you know, a lot, those are the individuals that many times will be standing in front of a classroom teaching.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're going to be a teacher, you have to, if you're going to be a good teacher, you have to be able to hold people's attention for a certain period of time. So there's those folks. But again, you know, those kids are looking up to you. Are you misusing your power over them? You know, are you putting in their soft heads your political ideals, for example?
Yeah.
Right? Instead of talking to them about the options and the different ideas that are out there, and you know, let them come to their own conclusion about things. So that's, like I said, if you have that type of talent, it's a big responsibility.
With great swagger comes great responsibility. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
The swagger, yeah.
All right, good stuff, Sam. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
All right.
Looks like we have about 12 right now. So our first question tonight comes from Manoj. Hi, Sam. How can we train our intuition and how to know when to trust your intuition? Kind of strange because we were kind of talking about that tonight.
Yeah, that seems to actually be a really big topic, that's been coming up a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I've really been, you know, thinking hard about what to tell people, how to train yourself, and again, um, intuition is much lighter than psychic. Intuition has more to do with your own individual life and situation. Whereas psychic, you're reaching up into the ethos and you can get information not only about yourself, but also those around you or of, you know, worldwide disasters and things like that, as you've seen. Um, yeah, so intuition is really based in the individual and being able to manage your choices and your future based on what you in your how should I say, your senses
Hmm.
feel what might be coming. You know, so it's almost like if you listen to tapes of something while you were sleeping, you know, you might
Okay.
pick up some of that information and not really know where it came from. That's kind of what the intuition is. So the best thing to do with that is to, make sure that you write things down. I think probably if this is something that somebody really wants to get a handle on, I would recommend, Manoj, that you start just with a diary every day and writing things down, and then comparing the results between what you're thinking and decisions that you made. And but then before you make the decision, you can think about like the other things that were pulling you in another direction that you were choosing not to do. But a lot of times you forget about those options until you read later on and say, oh, it really would have been better if I had
Yeah.
chosen those. But you forget about it if you don't write it down. So that would be information that I can share about that, Manoj.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always think about, decisions I've made that weren't coming out of a fear based or missing out or a panic. The thing that comes to mind are, big things that I've purchased in life, like whether it's my truck. I never planned to have a camper, but sure enough, I still got this truck 15, 14 years later, and it's been perfect for everything that we need it for. Like I'll get the urge to do something, and I've learned more to pay attention to it. And sure enough, it might not be that year that I need it, but I look back and I'm like, boy, am I glad that I got this when I got it. And it was just one of those things. I'm like, I think I should get this. So it's really those quiet nudges, learning to pay attention, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Oh, thanks for the mention, Susan OG. She says, I've seen you've been working on your health. Yes. So thanks for noticing, Susan. I appreciate that. All right. Our next question comes from Bradley J. Hello, Samantha and Rudy. You've mentioned so often about being off a year or two. Is there anything different in your visions or knowings regarding a longer or shorter time?
Yes, I can feel, because remember that visions don't necessarily come just as a seeing thing or a picture. It also comes like with a feeling and the amount of urgency that I have and things that are in the blab. Like I was comparing before to readings that I did with individuals who were just getting into the market before it went crazy, started to go crazy at the end of 2020, right? And those were the thing. And I noticed that I was like, oh, the blab is kind of going against what is normally said, in the sense of, don't FOMO, dollar cost average in, have some gunpowder there. I was like, blah, like, no, put it all in. Like, do you think you can get that 40,000 early? Oh no, I wouldn't wait. I was just feeling so like I felt that panic. And with that was coming the blab as well. So, we were talking before about paying attention
Mhm.
to your intuition. And I've learned to pay attention to the blab. And now when people are asking about a lot of things that are going on and happening, we go through Searchy here and there to, check for videos and see what I'm saying about
Yeah.
different things from, the years gone by, because a lot of that stuff is circling, like it's starting to it's like a slingshot now, like that stuff with Prince Andrew, for example.
Yeah.
That's going to be part 4 of the Epstein Chronicles, right? But you're starting to see now that's starting to play out, in the news and stuff like that. So again, um, it's very difficult to put a timeline on things like that, because it's almost like they're not layered on top of one another, but they're kind of bunched together, in the sense that you can't necessarily say, oh, that's going to happen in, January of 2022, and this is going to happen in, October of 2023, because even though to you and I, there's a, lengthy period of time that goes by when you're talking about infinity.
But yes, and there's definitely themes that seem to come out. If you watch the live streams over the course of a week or a month, the blab will kind of touch on certain things over and over again. But to your point, you just don't know when. But the more you hear it, you're like, that's something that we should probably pay attention to. So let's see, we can go on to our next question from Caitlin. And Caitlin asked, "Hey Sam, will it be safe to travel in Europe next summer? When do you see Europe being on fire, so to speak?"
I am not booking anything
Okay.
in Europe for next summer.
Yeah, my wife has a chance to go on some cruises or in 2024, I think, and I'm like, let's just wait. Let's see how things are, right?
Yeah, I would maybe book things very last minute. But again, look at how quickly things can change. I mean, look
Yeah.
at what's going on with the UK right now. We'll know by Friday if their pensions are going to completely melt down.
Yeah. That could be and this is around that timing where that would be, Friday's the 15th, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I know someone who mentioned on the 15th, I think it was October and November 15th, something happening. So
yeah, I know. That could be the
interesting.
big one. That could be, and then the Italian volcano Stromboli
Yeah.
is starting to explode. So maybe Deutsche Bank will also, or
Okay.
Swiss credit, which will cause, they said if Swiss credit goes, Deutsche will go.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
Deutsche Bank is one of those things you go back to 2019, you've been talking about that. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not surprised it took as long as it did because again, I listened to the blab. Even though it comes out of me, you're like, "Well, what do you mean you listen to the blab?" Yeah, I do because it doesn't come from me. I don't have a clue about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just not that smart, you know. I mean, I have one specialty and I only got into blockchain 5 years ago, so I'm definitely not a specialist in blockchain. I'm holding my own, but 5 years into it for, probably 3 years more than most people who are into it, right? So
Yeah.
again, there's not too many people who've been in blockchain 5 years or more. There's quite a few in our crew actually. I learn a lot
Yeah.
from the folks that we're hanging out with. But anyways, yes, I'm so sorry that Europe, I can't give a good report for that. I'm absolutely dying to do one of those river cruises,
Yeah.
through the Danube and up. But I mean, I'm the one who saw it. And if I get caught into it, that's my own damn fault.
Well, yeah, Caitlin, travel at your own risk and buy
Yeah.
travel insurance. That'd be the other advice, right? If you do want to go, because you never know last minute what can happen.
Well, but your travel insurance is negated, it's null and void with
Oh, for
war and act of God and all kinds of other stuff. But I mean, you can talk to people and find out, you
okay.
know.
Yeah, read terms and conditions. I like how Bradley says short-term blabs and long-term blabs. So we have two categories.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Solar Dragon. Hi, Sam and Rudy. I hope you're both doing well and feeling better. Are there real devices for consumer purchase to reduce harmful EMF waves, electromagnetic frequencies from our wireless devices? Thank you. Much love. And he has a link to what bioresonance tools where he's got some things in the past. And I know my wife has these little shungite rocks, I think, that
Yeah.
will stick on the back of your cell phone. And I know what you've said about these before, Sam, but I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, so okay, so devices for consumer to reduce harmful EMF waves from our wireless devices. Okay, so I think that, the boxes that people get that they can put things in to protect them from
The
those
Faraday
surges.
cage. It's like a
I
Faraday cage.
Yes, I believe those work.
Okay.
And I think that some of the stuff, for example, that Rudy's wife might work with,
Hmm.
that those things work. But again, it's a very specialized individual situation,
Okay.
but I find that generally a lot of this woo-woo stuff, like the EMF, I find,
Organite. There's all these things that people sell. They put a bunch
yeah,
of crap into epoxy and yeah,
yeah, yeah. I just, it's hard for me to comment on, it's such a large industry and there's so many things that are um, just don't give you the results. They don't work. But, it's the same in the beauty industry too, right?
that's true. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that you can buy. I never bought face creams or anything like that up until fairly recently because my dermatologist told me, it was all a bunch of hooey and they don't really work. He goes, just stay moisturized. Wear lotion, suntan lotion on your face. He goes, that's like the number one lotion. If you put that on, he goes, you'll look great. I was like,
Yeah, your dude's the
all
damage.
right, you're a dermatologist. I mean, you know what's going on. Well, it's the same. That was the comparison that I was getting
Okay.
from the people on the other side. They show me stuff. They're sort of like, it's hard to comment on an entire industry.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that people do. Like I'm using a handheld tool that years ago you could only go for sessions at a spa. And what
Mhm.
it does, it's for rosacea with my Irish
Oh, yeah.
skin and stuff, right? So I run it over my face and stuff, and it does work. But I'll tell you right now, there's all kinds of sort of lesser things. Like this is not a cheap item, right?
Right,
Right.
right,
So,
and
but there's ones that you can get that are cheaper, but they don't really work. So, yeah,
I'll,
it's
when you're in town next time, Sam, I have a couple examples, and maybe if we end up doing a psychic meetup, we should
yeah,
do kind of a live. I'll hand them to you and see what you think on them. But just to finish up on this question, we always are presuming that these EMF waves are harmful and they're bad for us
right.
because that's what everybody says. Sam, how harmful are some of these, like things coming from your phone if you're wearing earbuds all the time? Can they cause cancer, or is
No,
it pretty rare?
no, that stuff in your Diet Pepsi is more likely,
Okay,
to
your
cause a
the
brain
aspartame.
tumor. Yeah, the aspartame's far more likely to cause.
I love that
Oh,
stuff.
did you move to diet? Don't do it. Anyways, so I guess everyone gets my point though about some stuff works, but then
Yeah.
there's going to be many other things that don't work. And there's also I feel like people blow something out of proportion and they're like, "Oh, now we need something that we can set down over here that'll block the waves of your cell phone and your everything." It's like, well, no, I mean, you have to be somebody who is environmentally sensitive towards that stuff. And
Yeah.
that's a very, very small percentage of
Okay.
people. And people are like, oh, well, if there's, one in every, 500,000 that suffer from headaches or bad, situations from those sorts of waves, then it must be at least a little bit bad for us. And it's like, no, it's the same as, somebody who has something in their DNA that causes another situation for them, you
Okay.
know, where other, like the sun is a trigger. They can't go out in the sun,
Yeah.
it burns their skin off. But you and I, we're fine to go out in the sun. I mean,
And
yeah,
I've heard of people that, yeah, have had to move way out to get away from all sorts of
yeah.
EMF and electronic, and or you live under power lines, and many people are fine, but a few people don't do so well. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
interesting.
I've stood underneath power lines before because that's where my kid's bus stop was, and I felt the vibrations going through me. So I believe that it's real.
Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy to be that close to them. I do believe that there are people who are more environmentally sensitive, but it's such a small percentage. And the problem is that to create these devices, they have to market them to large numbers of people who don't need them, is my
Okay.
point. And, so, but for the people that it does help, I mean, God love them. I don't want them to feel that I don't believe that what's happening to them is not real because I know that it is. And so, like, it's like I have to try to explain myself sometimes because I don't want people to be like, oh, what's Sam talking about? Like, doesn't she understand? And it's like, yeah, I do. And you probably are going through it. But I told you, you're very special. You're one in 500,000. I mean,
Well,
it's,
and like you mentioned, like, there are people who can smoke their whole lives and not get cancer. Sometimes it's just your genetics, right?
you
So
got it.
that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, thanks. Our next question comes from Pony Pete. Dear both, do you think that people will reach planet Mars in the next 50 years? Will aliens come to Earth first, or will we meet them out there? Thanks.
Okay. So, yes, they will reach planet Mars in the next 50 years.
Really? Okay.
Um, I don't feel like they'll be able to get back, and that I don't feel like it'll be a successful mission. But anyways, I don't want to talk about. I don't want to discourage them from like doing it, except for the fact that I do feel like the time and the resources should be spent on defending Earth.
Okay. And
Space stuff is good.
I
Sorry.
think you mentioned that you will see aliens probably within 50 years, right?
Mm.
Probably 30
in
or
my lifetime. Yes.
okay.
So it's 2 years. So 33, 32 years. So like maybe 29 years from now,
Okay.
something like that. That's
Yeah.
when that space war, that war I was telling you about is going to come. But we need to get prepared for that. And that's why I would spend my time on that, or my money as well, rather than traveling to Mars. So that maybe that's going to be one thing that I'll be able to do a good enough job as far as individual predictions, worldwide predictions. Because if I'm doing a phone in every week, I mean, everybody's going to have documentation of my abilities, and I'll get people who ask me questions who are in Pakistan, and I mean, I
Right.
have no clue about any of those places. Right. That's the
Yeah.
amazing thing about it, right? Is that I can even, it's sort of like, how can she know well, I don't know all this stuff, and it's because, you know, I just have to get the message out there. Everybody's got to get along. We got to work together. We can figure stuff out, because there's a few things that are coming our way that, if we can work together as humanity, then that's going to be our best case scenario. Like the best result is going to come from that. So, anyways, but yeah, we're not going to meet them out there. They're coming to us. Believe you me, they're coming
Okay.
to us. Yeah.
And Lost Shaker says around about 2053, and that's funny, Lost Shaker, because years ago I had a dream, and it was something like it still sticks with me that the end of the world is in 2053. I don't know, and that always stuck with me. I think I measured it to Sam in one of my readings, but isn't that interesting around that, because that date always stuck out to me. So, all right, our next question we will go to Cat Lady AZ. And I'll let Sam click on it here.
I was just doing the math here. I think it's 2051.
2051. Okay, thereabouts.
Yeah, because that's what I got. Because I just took my birth date, and then I added how many years I'm going to live, right? And then I got myself up to 2054, and then I'm going to minus 3 years from that,
Okay.
because I was pretty sure that it was like 2 or 3 years before that, because I would
Yeah.
be alive for it. I'm going to be there to see. I'm going to be alive to see it.
Okay.
So all the more reason I got to get the message out. I got my personal butt on the line. I don't want to be part of a scary situation unless we're winning, like I see we will. But anyways, that's
Will
another story.
conventional firearms come in handy, Sam? The normal AR-15
No,
rifles?
no, no, no,
It'll
no,
just make people feel better, but okay.
no. Your guns won't help you, but our lasers will, and a few other space alien technology. But here's the thing, right? Is we have to place them all over the planet, so everybody has to be all on the same page.
Okay.
Right, you have to trust to give this technology, because you shoot it up, and that's how, because they're not going to make it to the planet Earth.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna go to war with them in our atmosphere. So, but anyways, I'm giving too many details. This is Rudy Psychic Meetup. We should do another live
We
stream.
still, yeah.
I'll do a live stream on YouTube. Let's talk about the
Hey,
alien
this is
arrival.
this is one of
Samantha
Lost
Jane
Shaker's.
talks alien arrival.
It's one of Lost Shaker's personal
I
obsessions, so I don't
know.
mind indulging him a bit.
I know I start blabbing. I'm getting more information from it. I'm like, okay, stop now. You're at 49 minutes, 50 minutes. You might have a coughing attack again. And I got
Yeah.
7 more questions to go. So
All right.
I know
Next
Lot
one.
Shaker's like, no.
All right, next one. Cat Lady AZ. Hi, Sam and Rudy. Start over. Hi, Sam and Rudy. Sam has said science will save us and we will have reversed engineered alien technology. Did an engineer, Bob Lazar, work on an alien power source that would replace our energy needs? If so, when will this tech be allowed to replace our current energy sources?
Okay, so I don't know who Bob Lazar is, but I do know that we do discover atomic energy where it has to do with the atoms. It's like a nuclear thing, but it's not the atomic bomb. It's a way that it continues to produce energy. It's like
Yeah,
those pendulums. It just keeps going and going. It doesn't need anything.
you mentioned it's almost like not a cold fusion where it
Yes.
perpetually generates. It just continues to
Right.
emit.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if Bob Lazar worked on it or not, but if he's claiming that he was an engineer and worked on alien power source, that's where it came from. So I'm
So
on the same page
Bob
with
worked
him. The
on.
story's right.
Okay, he was a guy, Area 51, that kind of did that expose where he talked about these different crafts that he saw that were supposedly captured in the alien technology. And what he was, I think he was engineering the gravity waves. We talked about those before, how things move and they
Yes.
use I forget the chemical, so I'm looking up element 115, but they're able to kind of project and warp gravity that makes it look like you're traveling super fast. So that's what I think Bob Lazar was. And Cat Lady, sorry, I don't recall if it's the energy source specifically, if that's what he worked on, but yeah, he was an Area 51 guy. So.
That would fit with the timeline because remember, again, going back to the blab, one of the pieces of information that I didn't know, right? It came in the blab. I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. You know, it didn't come from me. And that was that the reason the American military after World War II branched out into, because you notice it was really the bases and everything proliferated like crazy in the 1950s. Well, it was after Area 51 and that crash, and they got this technology that they hadn't figured out yet, but that it was amazing. And they were like, we have to make sure that nobody else gets this. And that's why they put the bases all over the world. So the
That's beautiful.
timeline fits
Yeah.
because they would have, maybe it was the power source. And I knew they had the anti-gravity
Yeah.
thing. Because I mean, that's you move like I mean, lightning speed, you're like boom. It's based on its gravity. And it's self-propelling as well. So it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing technology that they discovered. I mean, I can only just describe to you like what I'm seeing, but you can tell by how excited I am. I'm like, oh my God, blah blah blah.
Well,
It's
and that's been talked about, all the military bases around the world. It's also that we can get to stuff. If there is another crash report, we're able to get there first and get a hold of that technology.
yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, that totally, I didn't even think about it. But then as soon as it came out in the blab, and I was just like, that makes total sense
And
because
that would be
they
a good
did get,
place. Yeah.
yeah.
And the bases would be a good place to have those lasers you talked about too. So
Yes.
that might come in
Yeah, and
handy.
that's another technology that is kind of, they were on it anyways. It didn't come from aliens, but the technology they're getting from the aliens, because they have some sort of, it's not laser, but they have some sort of beam that can envelop and sort of bring you up.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like it's just like it's a light beam, but it's like the little molecules and stuff, and it brings. Anyways, they're
Yeah,
busy
tractor
figuring
beam.
that out. Yes, they're busy figuring that out. So
Oh,
that
okay,
would
cool.
be interesting. See, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I hope the Men in Black don't come for me. They'll be like, "We need you over here. You gotta wander around the ethos there, dumb aliens, and
Well,
help
and
us
there
figure."
are
Like, I don't know if I
reports
can
of
do it. I know
people that
I'm
have.
okay with hurricanes. I'm okay with hurricanes and connecting family members and cryptos. I got the story pretty good.
Yeah, well, and there's a famous UFO story. I think it was Travis Walton here in Arizona was doing
Yeah.
some logging and reports that he was captured by this light and brought up into this spaceship. That's what the witnesses saw. So, yeah, tractor beam technology, Martian Mike. Okay, Sam, let's keep going here. 6 more questions to go. Hello, Sam and Rudy from Huddle Queen. I recently learned that the late, great Loretta Lynn claimed to be psychic from the time she was 10. She owned one of the most haunted historic properties in America. She said she felt she had to buy it and had many experiences there. Does Loretta have anything she'd like to share with us? Was she drawn to Hurricane Mills because of a past life experience? Thank you. So Hurricane Mills must be the proper historic property that she bought.
Yeah. I do not have anything from Loretta Lynn, unfortunately. But thanks, Huddle Queen, for sharing that. I saw that on the news. We lost a lot of
Yep.
really neat ladies who lived to actually be quite old. The other Angela Lansbury
Yeah, Murder
died
She
as
Wrote.
well.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
lady.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes you get nothing. So,
I got nothing. Sorry, she's busy, I guess.
Thanks for the effort, Huddle Queen. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Wayne S says, "Hello, Sam. Where do aliens fit in with Source? Are they part of the collective consciousness?"
Okay. Yeah. And that's when it just gets into a really complicated story. Thanks,
Some
Wayne.
could be. Like some of them could be. Others are more like just creatures, like in the environment.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't have as much information about the alien nations.
Okay.
And it's not because they're not important, but for the most part, they're not important to us, like right now. I
Mm.
mean, we've got some pretty big fish to fry. Oh, I know Richard Carlson's asking, do aliens go to heaven? And it's like, I don't think that they are from source.
Okay. Interesting. We will find out more in the next 30 years. So stay tuned. All right. Limit Break says a few weeks ago, 433 people won the jackpot prize in the national lottery in the Philippines. The winning combinations were amazingly multitudes of 9, 45, 36, 27, 18, and 54. It's been in the news that, and as statisticians noted, that it was not mathematically impossible for 433 winners to strike it big, but investigations are underway. Was this event pure random luck, or was there fraud involved from the government, Sam?
Oh, well, it wouldn't be from the government
Okay.
because it
Or
says
just fraud?
433 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was an inside person.
Ah,
Yeah, and what
and
they
word
did
got
is
out.
they sold the winning ticket. They made sure
Okay.
those numbers came in and they sold it to people, right? So people had to go and get the money ahead of time, and then they knew that they'd have a winning ticket or a winning number. So that's how they did it. That's how they did the fraud. It was an inside person. It's not a government person. It's just an individual that
Okay.
figured out how they could make the machine come out with those numbers because of their IT prowess.
And people can't keep their mouth shut, and eventually many people got it.
Yeah.
Well, it did make me, Sam, I think I had this thought years ago. Is you think about like a Bitcoin miner, things that are proof of work. Could a group, like, if we, let's say our little group had a Sam Jam Bitcoin miner, could we focus our intentions on it enough, because it's so hard to get these the hash that you need to get the next Bitcoin? Could intentions focused on a Bitcoin miner actually influence you to generate more Bitcoins than it would just by chance?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know about that
And
one.
the people on the other side might not want us to do that, so we will move on.
Yeah, there's a lot that people on the other side don't want us to do.
All right. We have Michelle has two questions. One's kind of personal, Michelle, so we're just going to go with the one you have here. The first one: do you see in time that leaders of our countries worldwide will have integrity and the qualifications to be leaders to be proud of? It seems leaders are the bottom of the barrel, which is no good for anyone.
Oh, yeah, actually, Michelle, it's interesting that you asked that because one of the things that was brought to me today while I was making some food, funny enough, because that's usually what happens when I'm not doing anything other than, just my mundane chores or like making some food for my son, um, cleaning the kitchen, just like stuff comes to me and I'm like, I wonder if that's going to come up on Rudy Psychic Meetup tonight or the weekly crypto, like whatever the next one is. So this was earlier today, and I was shown that what's going to happen with blockchain is that the fiat currencies, we're always going to need them. That's why people are like, they're all crazy about the digital, the banks going to digital currencies,
Mhm.
and I'm like, what difference does it make? I mean, you use your credit card or your debit card for pretty much everything anyways.
Yeah.
So, just go with that, but understand that with blockchain, the way that it works is that societies that are well run and productive will be rewarded with a very stable fiat currency that people are willing to flip their money into for whatever period of time.
Okay.
Right? Because that'll be the game that people are going to play. Like, which fiat currency, if you're not in cryptos, if you're not in real estate, if you're not doing what currency are you going to save your money in? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the US dollar, even though the US dollar will reign supreme. Countries who manage themselves economically, they don't run on these deficits. This is the problem with the UK right now. Like, nobody wants their stinky currency. Nobody wants to invest in them. Nobody wants to. They just see it as a ship that's going down. And you can't blame people for not. I mean, would you put your life savings into, even a portion of your savings, into a country that the chances are you're going to get zero back bupkis? Should you do it out of the goodness of your heart? No, because that does not encourage people to run things properly. So what'll happen is that people will begin to elect leaders who get them results, because everybody wants results and they see all these other countries getting results. So then they begin to move towards the same types of leaders who get results, because then all of a sudden it's going to be like, after everything going to crap in the UK, people finally crawl on the ground and beg Nigel Farage to lead them.
Well, and I think you're also starting to see people that are just frustrated and have had it, that are willing to stand up and take the lead because of things are being driven off into a ditch. So I think we are even seeing that in the candidates. I mean, I see that locally, that more people are throwing their hat in the rings because they're just done with the career politicians.
Yeah, and I saw that in a really big way in Australia, which is why, because I was kind of asking, well, how come things go so much better for Australia than for the United Kingdom? Because really, I mean, the United Kingdom is just Australia and the United Kingdom, and in a very much, Canada and Australia actually are very similar in the sense that both very resource-rich countries. They are Commonwealth countries, but the UK is doing so terribly, and as far as Canada goes, it was among the least worst faring countries against the US dollar during the recent craziness. Like the Japanese yen just got hammered, and the European, the euro didn't do very good against the US dollar the last year, but Canada did okay compared to everyone else, and Australia, I think, was right beneath Canada as far as that goes.
And did you say Australia would make the turn first? Like they're going to, in terms of getting their leaders and getting the people in order, getting their house in order long before Europe actually comes around?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I felt like they would be, I out of choosing out of all three places, I was like, well, I think if I had to choose between the UK, Europe, or Australia, I'd probably choose Australia. Because I mean, everybody's going to go through hard times. You're looking at who's going to handle it the most and put the best leaders in place. And so, you know what, Michelle, it's going to happen. That's a really great question. And it's just going to happen. And it's going to be the peer pressure that comes from the people in one country watching other countries do extremely well.
Okay. All right, Sam, let's go with our last question from Colin. Last question tonight. Unless you want to address, I think Michelle had two there, but Colin writes, I just finished reading Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Fascinating stuff regarding the afterlife. Is Sam aware of this book, and what are her thoughts on pre-life hypnotic regression? Thanks.
Well, I have not read this book, Journey of Souls. I've heard about it. I probably should read it just because, again, a lot of people who are going to be probably wandering in my space will have read the book and want to know my feelings about it. So I probably should read it. I do try to look into a lot of this stuff, you guys, just because I don't want to be a total dummy when it comes to a lot of the woo things that are out there. It's just that fortunately the last 4 years while I've been learning, that's what's really helped me, I think, be able to excel in my abilities with the help of the Sam Jammers, is because I don't have any of the preconceived notions of other things.
Yeah.
So I do think, the people on the other side, they were pretty smart with knowing that and setting it up that way. So, I should take a look at that. And I don't really have too many thoughts on pre-life hypnotic regression. I don't get a whole lot of information about our previous lives, and what information I have gathered from it is that with our walk right now, with what we're going through right now, our our previous lives have absolutely no bearing,
Okay.
on what we're going through right now. So it's just more of a sport thing, in my view, to do. But again, if you're gathering information about our spiritual journey, then I agree that it's all worthwhile. I think all of these experiments are worthwhile doing. Pre-hypnotic regression to look at your past lives. And I just don't like when I hear from people that, you know, oh yeah, I found my soulmate, and then he dumped his wife and 4 kids, and I dumped my husband and 3 kids, and now we're, you know what I mean? It's sort of like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
don't
in
really believe that stuff.
with a lot of the like the past life stuff, obviously there's no way to validate it, and it's not like, so how do you know it? It can be it can be entertaining, but the other thing is some practitioners will use this as that's their hammer, and every problem that comes to them is the nail. Like, oh, we'll fix it with past life. And some of the work my wife does, kind of the last like the highest level that you get to in this program, they learn about how to use past life regressions and do some work for to help heal certain things that people might have going on with them. But it's pretty rare. It's not like a tool that you use all the time, but it's a tool in the toolbox. And I think there are cases where it can make sense and it can help with some healing some things. But it's not necessarily one of those things where like everybody needs to go get their past life regression done. And even if you did, it might not tell you anything, right? So that's kind of how
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah, and a lot of what I worry about is, the quacks.
Hmm.
And again, there's certain things that people are drawn to because they really, really, really want to have some sort of
Yeah.
woo-woo ability, because maybe their mom did, maybe their sister does, maybe they go to a spiritual church and that was just they just wanted it so badly, so by convincing themselves that they're able to do these, past life regressions, and they do that, and they feel like they're helping people, and people are really, looking to them for information as well, so
Yeah.
this may be something that, again, I would be more interested in the story of how somebody, got into it. Because again, going back to our previous subject about how many of the people who are right for this type of work are not people who have, readily
Yeah.
volunteered for it, I guess is the
Well,
best way to put it.
that's a good way to say it. And
Yeah.
as Moo even says with crypto is like if it's not actionable intelligence for you, like what good is it? It might be entertaining to get a past. Like if you're looking to say, well, I want to get a past life, this,
Yeah.
like, can you do anything with it?
Yeah.
Maybe, but I would say if you want to, might be good entertainment for most people, but I wouldn't get too caught up on it. This is the life we're here to live, not the one that we may have been part of before. Right.
All right. Well, with all that said, thanks again, everyone, for hanging out. I'm glad my coughing fits were few and
Yes.
far in between. So I'm going to keep going, and hopefully I'll see most of you on the weekly crypto review with Muad tomorrow. Thanks again, Rudy.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Bye bye.
Bye for now.